Kids enjoying a splash in the river Jamuna. Nothing reminds the jolly scenery of the devastation brought to this place just a few weeks ago. One of the heaviest floods hit the district of Gaibandha in the northern part of Bangladesh, spelling misery on an area notoriously famous for its disasters. The river, originating from the Himalaya and finding its passage through India, belongs to Bangladesh's mightiest waterways. An approximate of 900,000 people live alongside the Jamuna River in the Gaibandha district. Some of them, though, live in the river on islands commonly known as chors. Kabir Hussain is one of the chor residents.
I have been living in the chor since I was a child, and I have seen floods come and go year after year. They forced me and my family to move more than 20 times. This year, the flood was even worse than in the previous years.
Jamila Begum lives in the same chor. Her sun-tanned, wrinkled face and black-tinted teeth from chewing betel nuts give evidence of her age. For the lady, it adds insult to injury that once again the recurrent floods destroyed her livelihood.
In my life, I have seen many floods come and go, at least 50 of them, but even worse, I was affected by river erosion at least 40 times, and each time the river just washed away all my land.
Her neighbor, Nazram Begum, nods in consent. Her place has been equally affected by the last floods.
Year after year, we are flooded. But this year, the disaster came twice. The water came, it went, and it came again. People had no opportunity to cultivate anything. They were totally helpless. Although they would have had enough land to cultivate, there never was the right time.
A story hard to believe. Looking at the Jamuna River during the dry season gives no clue of devastation. There barely is any water in the river. The only signs of inundations and erosion in the river banks. But it is an important issue to the people in the area, explains Abdul Rafiq, District Relief Officer and Head of Disaster Management Cell in Gaibandha.
We face river erosion every time. The water level rises to a critical point, and each time the signs of destruction show fierce dimensions. As soon as the river expands, due to rising water level, the eroding of the riverside starts.
The consequences are severe. Erosion affects the embankments or dikes built alongside the river. Inundations occur when embankments erode during the monsoon season. The effects of river erosion are dreadful, says Amirul Islam, chairman of a local union in Sundarganj in Gaibandha district.
River erosion is a dreadful thing. It's just like somebody burning down your house, plus taking away the land you are living on. You are virtually ripped off from everything to the bone. The people here depend on the soil. It's often their sole source of income. Sometimes the flood creates new chores, but these islands are not fertile. It takes about 5 to 7 years before the soil gets cultivable. In some cases, it even may take 10 years or more.
The social dimensions of erosion-related disasters are multiple. As the majority of people living along the riverside are poor, they cannot recover easily from disaster. Erosion and inundation increase poverty. To prevent disaster, or at least mitigate its effects, and to reduce the vulnerability of the people along the river banks, dams and dikes are required. To take the risk away from the people as Dr. Ainun Nishat, Country Director of the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, IUCN, explains.
The main threat to the dikes are this river erosion. Now in your country, in Germany or in Netherlands or in Belgium, all the rivers are kind of armored. Stones are used, concrete blocks are used, and the rivers cannot move. But we do not have. The rivers are totally free. And it moves. Any alluvial river would move. And when it moves, it causes erosion and valuable lands are lost. In the process, dikes are breached and the dike system becomes inoperative. You know, when an urban area is being eroded, we go and dump some stone, but these are not properly designed. So what we are pushing the government is that whatever they do, they should be properly engineered, properly designed and properly managed.
To do so, erosion has to be identified as a priority and preactive measures taken. But, as Muzaddid Farooq, Director General of Bangladesh Water Development Board, points out, it is quite a tall call to meet all expectations.
This river protection work is really very expensive, and we have the certain limitations or constraints of our fund constraints of our country. So our national program says that we will take up the flood control and the river erosion control measures, particularly in the city areas and economic important areas. Those are the priority areas.
The people in the chores of Gaibandha district belong to the poorest class in Bangladesh. Economic activity is very low. During the last flood in 2007, about 35,000 families were severely affected by flood water. Embankments were broken and many areas inundated. Hundreds hectares of seeds, jute and vegetable gardens with fishes of ponds have gone under flood water. Poultry, goats, cows and houses have been swept away with the water. These women described the horror of the hour when they saw the water level rising inch by inch.
I was scared to death when I saw the water rising. I didn't know what to do, where to go, how to escape from this threat. Thoughts were rushing through my mind like, how would I get something to eat if the water level rose up to the house? You can't imagine how terrified I was when I saw the water rising and rising. At a given moment, I just thought, well, that's it. I'll lose everything. We couldn't flee. We didn't have a boat or a possibility to build a raft. We just felt horrible. Not only did we lose our entire crops, but also our livestock. My chicken died and my geese just were floated away by the strong current. Even my dog was carried away by the river.
Every killed animal is a heavy loss for the Chor people. A cow would sell for 8,000 taka on the market, a goat for 2,000 taka, a chicken for 200 taka. Without this source of income virtually lost in the floods, the victims are thrown back economically for years, informs Habib Rahman Chaudhry, Country Director of the German NGO NETS.
If one poor family is losing her cow, they are actually 2 years back again. They need at least 2 years to come to the situation they were before. It's a vicious circle, and most of the people in the chores, they start their life afresh every year because many of their assets are lost. By erosion, it can be by robbery, it can be by selling to the rich people. So rich people sometimes also use this opportunity to buy these things in a low cost, cheap price. And they are sometimes giving money as loan to the poor people during this crisis and with high rate of interest. So disaster is gradually increasing the poverty.
Poverty reduction, therefore, is one of the main goals, and for which NETS goes in the chores. One measure is to raise the homestead to avoid inundation during the flood. Another measure is to build flood shelters by raising big parts of land in the chores.
We are raising the earth up to the level from the memory of the people what was the highest level of water during the flood in the last few floods. And now we are trying to raise the land above that level so that most probably in the next few floods people can take shelter in those places.
This measure is greatly appreciated by the Chor residents, not only because it could protect them from the next flood, but also it's a source of income in the area, says Nazram Begum.
Lots of people were so happy when they were offered a job to build the flood shelters in the chores. About 200 villages were engaged, which generated income and the survival of another 200 family members. That's why we all, male and female, took the job. We didn't have to go to bed anymore with an empty stomach.
Abu Talib also was lucky to get this job, but he laments that it is only a drop in the ocean. After finishing the flood shelter, he'll be left without work again.
Life is very difficult here. We face problems all the time. During the dry season, there is hardly anything for us to do. There is no business at all. Transportation is difficult because there are no roads and no vehicles in this area. Same during the rainy season. We are forced to walk through the river up to our chins in water or by swimming. Our grounds get inundated, we lose our crops, and when there is time and opportunity to work in the fields, we can't afford to buy seeds. Just look around. There's plenty of land, but there is no money in my pocket.
So, if life is so difficult and strenuous on the chores, why don't people just move away?
Then tell me, where can we go? If I go to Dhaka to work as a rickshaw puller, where would we stay? My kind of work doesn't provide me and the family with enough income to rent a house or to meet up my total family expenditure. I have children too. We live in the shorelands only for one reason. We can't afford land possessions on the mainland. It's too expensive there. If you want to make a living on the mainland, you need some support from your neighbors. We from the shores are just too poor to survive on our own. So, there is this psychological aspect of islanders feeling inferior to the mainlanders. That's the reason people from shores don't move away.
The geographical location makes Bangladesh vulnerable to natural disasters like floods, droughts and cyclones. Major floods have occurred numerous in the last 2 decades. During each flood, hundreds of people were killed and damages to crops, small enterprises and infrastructure rose to billions of dollars. As numerous were the floods, as numerous were studies, recommendations and plans to mitigate flood risks and protect the people from disasters. Where do they lead to? World Bank Country Director Jian Chu believes Bangladesh and its partners are on the right track, but need to put more efforts in faster implementation, especially after the experience of this year's floods.
Both, the development partner and the government need to learn the lessons. I see the sense of urgency in the context of climate change impact on the country. If we do not do well over the next 5 years, the country will suffer much more than before. And from the natural disasters, we have to manage that as one of our top priority. I hope this is a wake-up call, not necessarily only for the government, for development partners, but also for the population by and large.
Upgrading the standards of construction for roads, particularly rural roads, that serve as a lifeline during the flood period should help the affected areas. Jianzhu stresses that these standards should be mandatory for all roads instead of restoring the roads in a piecemeal fashion year after each flood.
In this country, a lot of rural roads have been built, but they are built at very low standards. So when the flood or other natural disasters occur in the country, they will just erode it. And my argument is that if you can build them at a high standard, or you put them in a different construction code into the system, and then these roads can be built maybe at a high cost, but eventually they can resist the natural disaster more strongly. Also, the country built some embankments along the major rivers, along the coastal areas. Erosion is a serious problem. But at the same time, I said, in terms of managing the land, if you only build embankments, that's only for one purpose. If no flood, nothing, they stand there idle. But at the same time, in some areas, the embankments have been built along with the idea of the multi-purposes. And then you build road somehow on the embankment. And then you know that in normal time, people use that. People see the value.
We have songs. I mean, our culture is dependent on nature, rainfall, the behavior of the river. And most of our folk songs are based around river. And it would say that it erodes, it destroys, and it builds. Now, if you take satellite imageries at the rate of 10 years interval, and you calculate how much has been eroded and how much has been built up, possibly it will balance. So the amount of land that is eroded is equal to the amount of new land that has come up. But the issue is the land that has eroded was a productive land. The land that has been built up would need, under natural process, 30 years to become productive again. So people move in within 5 years after it has been silted up. The yield is very low, life is very difficult. So if you go to the central part, yes, new chores are coming up, new lands are coming up. Initially, they are nothing but sand fields. And then maybe in 30 years' time, they become productive. Now, Bangladesh cannot have that luxury of a 30-year time lag.
That was the special program, Living on Uncertain Grounds, Flood and Erosion in Gaibandha. Before we end, best wishes to you all from me, your presenter Sabrina Farah. The program was narrated by Shamim Khan, voice over Dewan Sabrina Sharmin and Soyod Saleh-Uddin Ahmed, engineering assistants Mohammad Mahabubul Alam and AKM Ilyas Hossain. This program was jointly produced by Peter Koppen and Dewan Mohammad Ahsan Habib from Deutsche Wella Radio and the External Service of Bangladesh Betar.